My song. There you
Yes.
go. How you doing?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. I'm hanging in there. I'm new at this too. I mean, I've been doing it for a while, but the TikTok lives, I'm just amping up the amount I do.
Yeah, I've done it myself, but I've never joined anyone else. So today is the first.
It's the first. Oh
It's the
wow,
first
really?
time on somebody else's live. So
I
yay.
hear you.
Thank
Let me
you
tell you.
for giving me my experience.
No, this is so cool. Like it's I should really. I'm trying to get this thing down. She got this part of me with this thing here. I'm trying
Mhm.
to bring it down a little bit. Just give me 1 second. I want to keep it like that, but give me 1 minute. You gotta sometimes adjust this stuff. Ugh. Okay, that's better. Okay, how are you?
I am well. Thank you. Thank
I,
you for inviting me.
no problem, and I enjoy your podcast as well.
Thank you. Thank you
I
so much.
like it. I like it. I was it when I was listening to it. This is what we're talking about. This is Ascension, right? Ascension's Lab.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
and I was listening to it. And I was like, okay, it's getting deep here. This is getting deep here. I was listening to it. I was like, because I wanted to just listen to see what it was all about, and then
Mhm.
I started commenting. I'm like, whoa, this is. I want to do this again. I like it.
Yeah, we'll be back next week. We both have pretty crazy schedules, and so it's like nailing down when we're gonna commit, because she travels a lot, I travel a lot, and so it's easier during the week, but the weekend is best for her. But she got kids and all this kind of stuff. Mine is gone. My daughter has skipped on out of here, so I don't have that responsibility, but she's got babies, so.
Oh, well, I'm an old parent. I had one like 10 years ago. He's 10 now, going on 11. Oh my God. Whew.
Time flies. Better
Oh my
enjoy it. I'm telling you.
no, so I'm like, wow.
Mine is going to be, how old is she going to be this year? 23, I think.
Okay.
So, yeah, she's grown and gone and doing her.
Okay.
I definitely miss her, but I do enjoy my freedom.
Wow. Okay.
Mhm.
So this is Sin, the infamous Sin Williams. So tell
Or
me.
Cinda or Cindy. I usually go with Cindy because people know me as Cinda. See,
Yeah.
people know me as Cindy. So it's
Right.
just like, let's just do the nickname that a lot of people call me. They either
Yeah.
call me C or Sin.
Tell me a bit about your background. How did everything get started for you? Like, how did it all begin? Um, with singing and acting. Because I know you do singing and acting, right? So,
Mhm.
how did some people are just sing, some people act, or some people, how did it start for you? I'm curious to find out.
Well, to be honest with you, I mean, this is not always the case,
Hmm.
but back in the day, you had to do everything. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? You
Yeah.
you had to sing, you had to act, you had to dance, you had to know behind the scenes, you had to know everything, and that's the era that I came up in.
Right. Right.
I started as a singer. I've been singing longer than I can remember.
Okay.
My uncle James was a professional
Hmm.
singer, and he moved to Chicago because that's where his band was, and so he stayed with my family for a while.
Hmm.
And he brought me and started teaching me. He had a keyboard and started teaching me how to sing. He said, I don't even know how old I was, maybe 3 or 4.
Hmm.
And so I've literally been singing as forever. And I think my first time ever singing in front of people was for the family, because
Yeah.
how in the old school families they make the kids perform. That was us. We all had to do something,
Hmm.
and but I was very quiet. I was very shy.
Hmm.
The acting truly began
Hmm.
when I think around the time I started school, and this isn't in front of people. This is by myself. I talked a little bit about this today. I used to talk to myself out loud. I would have full conversations.
That clip today.
Not, yeah, not just, like I would be everybody involved in the conversation.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I would be everybody.
Hmm.
And I did that because I really didn't hardly have any friends. I didn't have anybody to talk to. I had all brothers and male cousins.
Okay.
I didn't have a female come into my generation, and she actually isn't in my generation. She's an ex.
Right.
But Monica and Sadika, my sisters, you saw Sadi, they came in when I was in my teens.
Hmm.
And so for 14 years and really longer because they were babies, I didn't have any girls to talk to,
Okay.
and my mom was not really super demonstrative. She was very quiet and reserved and really didn't talk a whole lot.
Right.
My aunts were raising their families. My grandmother was extremely stern and quiet. I didn't really know my aunts and my grandmother on my mom's side of the family. So I didn't have anybody to talk to. And my family is very patriarchal.
Okay.
Well, the men were with the men, the women were with the women, the women served the men, and blah, blah, blah. So I learned how to do all things domestic and all of that. And I also learned to speak when spoken to only.
Hmm.
And so I talked to myself. And I think that really began my study of characters
Right.
because I I would be other people that I knew that I was confronting, and I would be them. I would be them, whoever they were, boy, girl, whatever, whoever I had an issue with,
Hmm.
or some boy I had a crush on, or whatever. I would have full conversations, and I would be every character, every person. So that's how I really began acting.
Hmm.
But my first like acting thing, I think for real, was when I was in eighth grade.
Okay.
I had a wonderful teacher. Her name is Mrs. Waits at Bennett Elementary in Chicago, Illinois.
Hmm.
And I'd been in the choirs the whole time.
Hmm.
And she decided that her kids were too talented to not do something real. So we ended up doing the Mikado, which is operetta. So it's not straight acting, you're singing everything, but it's an opera.
Right.
And I was I got one of the roles. So
Right.
that was the beginning of that.
That's good.
And so I never really I have certain gifts for
Hmm.
sure.
Hmm.
Beyond the creative, I have other kind of gifts.
Hmm.
Therapeutically, yeah, skilled.
Okay.
I actually did go back to school to be a hypnotherapist, but not really. I just wanted to get the skills of therapy
Okay.
in a short form instead of going to a full out uh, get that because I knew I always wanted to act, sing, write, all the things I do.
And,
But I
and
needed some skills
that's good.
because so many people would come to me
Mhm.
asking for advice, sharing deep, dark secrets, strangers, everybody. So got to the point where I needed to protect myself a little bit. So I got some skills. And
That was good. That was
anyway,
good.
that's how it began, and it never stopped. It
Yeah.
never stopped. Hmm.
And so now you're entering the business now. So what were some of the from back in those days, because it's not like it is now with social media, right? It's not like
Hmm.
what were some of the challenges that you faced, like getting into the business, like getting into, you know, the singing and the acting part of it? Like, what are the challenges that you faced? Because I know it was tough back then.
Well, honestly, getting in wasn't the challenge for me.
Okay.
That was
Mm-hmm.
I think that talking to myself helped me because I didn't understand that I was actually creating
Mm-hmm.
when I would do that. I literally would have conversations with different directors
Mm-hmm.
that I knew of, but at the time I thought it was just going to be Broadway.
Okay.
But I'd heard of Spike. My senior year in college, I dated a guy who introduced me to Spike Lee and She's Gotta Have It and School Days.
Right.
And I knew that this guy named Spike Lee directed it, and so I started having conversations with him.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, how are you? I'm fine. How you doing? And talking about him giving me work.
Right. Right.
I used to have full, and every once in a while I would catch myself doing it like in public. I'd be walking down the street in New York City having a full conversation with Spike. This is before I even knew I was going to do movies because that wasn't never my intention.
That's weird because I used to work downtown. I used to work downtown Brooklyn,
Hmm.
And we used to go to this diner over there, and I used to always see him in there. Like I used to always see him sitting down in the diner. You say what's up, and say what's up. And the studio was about like his what is the name of
40
the
acres.
huh? Yeah,
40 acres, yeah.
yeah, 40 acres. Yeah, it's right around the corner. So it was big for us back then.
Yeah, I remember. I
That was
actually
nice.
moved to Brooklyn myself. I was right with the street from 40 Acres, and I lived in Manhattan first.
Hmm.
But yeah, it I literally was very odd. I never I had so many responsibilities as a person in my family. I was the oldest girl, oldest in most of the family in my generation. So I was very busy in church, which
Hmm.
was a big part of our lives. I was very busy in, maintaining grades.
Right,
I
right.
was helping. My mom had polio, so she was always in pain. So I was helping a lot in the house, doing cooking, cleaning, all that kind of stuff. I had multiple siblings. There's seven of us in all,
Right,
five at living in the same place. My two youngest sisters
right.
came later with when my father remarried, but I was in charge. And so every other second of my time, I was in a play, I was singing, I was doing something creative. I did not party. I did not drink. I did not do drugs. I did not do anything like I just didn't. I didn't hang out. Books were my best friends, and acting and singing was my life
Okay.
outside my family. So by the time I moved to New York,
Hmm.
well, what I was afraid first. I was like, am I going to be good enough? Because I'm from Chicago, but I moved to Indiana for
Yeah.
high school and college, and I had been doing shows constantly. I did it for 7 years straight.
Wow.
Vocal vocal coaching. I'm a classical singer, a show constantly, and I would work through the summer. So summer stock, all of that kind of stuff. I
Hmm.
was auditioning for commercials. I had to leave Chicago because at the time my look was not in. And it was primarily commercials and stuff like that. Theater and commercials. You
Hmm.
didn't really make a living in theater. But every casting director was like, "You'll never work here the way you look. You don't look black. You don't look black,
Hmm.
and you're not Spanish, and you're definitely not white. We can't place you anywhere, so you should go somewhere where there's more of a variety of people, and the markets are different, like LA or New York."
Wow, that's interesting.
So I wasn't upset by that because I wanted to leave. And I did. And I went to New York first, which is where I intended on staying because I love it there. But I wanted to do movies. Once I got that bug,
Hmm.
I was like, ah. And that the casting directors also said that. They would always say, you should do movies.
Hmm.
I'm like, I don't understand. I don't know nothing about movies. I'm a movie illiterate. I don't watch movies, because that we had no control of the movie of what we watched at home. My dad did
Right,
sports, and it was news,
right, right,
sports and news,
right.
and very rarely were we allowed to watch any kind of programming on television. We didn't have a whole lot of money to watch movies or go to the theater. We would go to drive-ins every once in a while, and that was a blast. But I just wasn't into movies like that. So when all these people came to my job, I was working doing an off Broadway show right after I moved to New York. I got a job right away, and I was like, "Oh, I can handle this kind of competition. I got this." And all these people came to me, were like, "You ought to go on for Spike Lee's new movie. They can't find a girl.
Right,
He's already been all over the place. He can't find a girl." And I'm like, "I don't know nothing about this stuff." And they're like, "No." So everybody's giving me the information, and I finally was like, "This many people tell you to do something.
hmm
I gotta." To me, that's more than a sign. That's in your face, smacking you in the face.
right,
Listen.
right, right.
So that's how I ended up just taking the information from backstage and going to the casting office and saying, "Hi, can I audition?" And that was the beginning of completely a jog in a different direction that I ever expected. You know?
Wow. And who at that time, right?
Mhm.
You decided? I know, you know, you're doing the, you know, the shows, but during that time of your in your life, who were your influences?
Nobody out there.
No.
Like I said, I didn't watch movies.
So you didn't. Okay, okay. So there's. Whew,
I didn't watch movies.
no,
My
man.
influences were the people I worked with
Hmm.
directly, and local people, regional people, summer stock people, people at school, um, my teachers. Yeah, my uncle, my number one mentor, a woman named Beth Turcott, who really working with this woman I knew. A
Hmm.
woman named Nancy Krause while I was in high school. She got so much flack for creating opportunities for me to do theater at my school because when we left Chicago, we went from almost a completely all black neighborhood
Hmm.
to Indiana, where it was almost all white
Yeah.
and a different class of people. They were rich, white, and so I just didn't fit in. And this woman, I don't know how, saw something in me
Hmm.
because she got, oh my gosh, she was so mistreated by parents and all of that because she was giving me parts.
Right.
And the racism was real, and they were very angry about that. And she just didn't care. And not only did she create stuff that I could do,
Hmm.
and do cross casting and stuff like that. She also started, like we did Raisin in the Sun at a school
Hmm.
that had a sprinkle of black folks, but we had enough of us there to do a Raisin in the Sun.
Right.
And I will always love her for that. She's still with us, and I every year is her birthday. I'm like, thank you, thank you.
Right.
And so those were my influences, not people in the business.
Not people in the business. Hmm.
Not people. People ask me all the time. They like, when you was in Mobile Blues, how did you feel about working with all those stars and all this kind of stuff? And I'm like, I didn't know who any of them were. I mean, I had heard of Denzel because a couple of years prior, for school, I had a New York trip and I had an LA trip with my theater group or whatever.
Right.
And so one of the things that they allowed us to do was there was an audition for I can't remember, the Mighty Quinn. It was called the Mighty Quinn.
Remember that.
At the time, it was called Finding Monkey.
Right.
And I got a chance to audition for that, and it was kind of like just an experimental thing for students.
Right.
So I heard of him the first time then,
Okay.
and because he was one of the leads in that.
Hmm.
But I didn't know nothing else about it. You know what I'm
Wow.
saying? I was like, I didn't know who he was. I had never seen him work. I didn't watch television. I just didn't have time. I was too busy doing this stuff myself. So when I got in this project, of course I knew who Spike was, but no one else. No one else. I knew
Oh,
that.
you know Wesley Snipes.
Oh no.
No,
Mm-mm.
what's the other one? Who else was it?
Giancarlo
Yeah,
Esposito, the
he's
Tafuro brothers, Samuel Jackson,
God.
Robin Harris.
Really? Wow.
The list is amazing,
Yeah.
and I didn't know none of them. I didn't know none of
Oh,
them, and I didn't even think that way. I was just
yeah.
like,
Mm.
this is another ensemble piece.
Right.
You know
Right.
what I'm saying? This is an ensemble,
Yeah.
and I really had no expectations. I didn't know the process for filmmaking. I could tell the talent,
Hmm.
but I just shoot, I forgot my drink. You gonna give me 1 second, please?
I'm with you.
Grab a drink. Sorry.
It's no problem.
Anyway, yeah. So,
In our community, like like I said, that Brooklyn was. I'm from Brooklyn, so
mhm.
Spike Lee was he was big to us, right? So, but your role was an iconic. It was so iconic for us too. We loved it, right? All of us in during that time. So we were like, it was so cool. It was a nice film. It was a very good film. It was just something different. It was just everything was just different. We saw Denzel act a certain way. Wesley came out, like you said, Robin Harris and everyone, and then you were there, and then Jody and Joey Lee, and it was just a nice time, right, for that movie. It was just a beautiful.
Yeah, I remember when the critics really were kind of hard on it
Yeah,
because they wanted another Do the Right Thing.
yeah,
They said, that he dropped the ball. He wasn't sticking to his guns on his, black power and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, to me, as phenomenal as Do the Right Thing was, and it was,
mhm,
this type of movie was that much more life changing for people because it was seeing uh, black romance. It was seeing black people hanging out. Not, you had the drug element, a little bit of that, but not much.
the jazz
Um,
too, the jazz music.
but the jazz music, it was celebrating the music that, I think Clint Eastwood to that point had done something, but not that many people had done a lot of that. And definitely not people of color.
Right.
So that movie was special for so many reasons, um, that, to this day, I have people reaching out to me on, it's their favorite movie. I have some other films that the people
Yeah,
say that about also, but this, especially the song. The
yeah,
song, I
yes.
think,
I was just playing a little while ago. I was like,
yeah, I think if I had not sung the song, I may not have had or made as much of an impression
mm,
because, she was just kind of like the side chick,
right,
even though you hadn't really seen that in movies yet,
right, right,
not a lot of it. Um, it the song made her whole,
right.
and because there was a lot of hey queen, there's a lot of different uh, parts of it that stood out to people, and
Right.
everybody was different. But jazz musicians, I'm telling you, to this day, if somebody's over 40,
Right.
and sometimes maybe 35, but over 40, if they see me, they're like,
I know. It was the movie just did a lot for everyone in the movie, right? And it introduced us to talent. This which is what he's good at. He's very good at introducing new talent, right? New actors. He's phenomenal at it. Probably one of the best. And like I said, it was like it was something that we growing up like we saw like we love all his movies, but it was something about the movie. It brought that whole cast together. That
mhm.
was something that wasn't usually done, you know, in
Exactly,
that time, right? You know what I mean? One of
exactly.
my favorites in one movie.
Hmm.
You know what I
And
mean?
and I mean it had levity, it had drama, it had music, it had romance, it had so much in it that you just didn't see in films with people that look like us.
Right.
You didn't have that. So, you know, it was it was difficult at times for me because like I said, it was a whole new world. I was experiencing things I never experienced before and seeing walks of life I'd never witnessed. I was very alienated growing up the way I did. Um, so it wasn't always perfect. It wasn't easy, but I'm gonna tell you the experience and the education that I got was
Right.
amazing. I was able to learn. I since most of my work was with either Denzel or Wesley, and that's it. There was a lot of scenes I wasn't in, so I came. I went to the set and I watched as
Yeah.
much as I could because I had to learn. I had to catch up. I didn't know anything about, where's my frame and what's my light look like and all this kind of stuff. Speaking of light, I'm kind of dark, but
No,
um,
it looks warm. It looks warm.
yeah, so it's like storming outside. I'm glad it was like beating against the wind. I'm glad it stopped. But yeah,
And
so it was a great education and the beginning of a career.
okay.
A lot of people think that was the end of my career, which is crazy to me. But
No.
but
No. Those of us that follow, like those of us that understand that movie, right? We were interested in anything else. But of all the actors in the movie, we were interested in their future work. So
Mm,
that's why we saw Caught Up. You know what I mean? We saw um, it's a lot of those movies because it's a few of them that I remember, but it wasn't. and then plus you're singing. The song is what I like too. See, that's why I wanted to ask you about the song, because before it slips my mind. Now that song comes out, it's a hit, right? So the song's a hit now. So tell me how does that help you in terms of music now? Like, were you doing a lot of shows then, would be based on that, or you got a lot of you know did you get asked to do some collabs, things like that?
Well, it was very interesting because I was a singer first. That was me. Even though I did not sound like anybody else really, I had a very different tone than the people that were working at that time. And so I didn't really fit into any real genre, but my style was my own. It was original. A lot of people, and this can happen to many people that do their first big project, right? And this was my first project, let alone first big project.
Right.
But you get stuck.
Mm-hmm.
I was not a jazz singer. I never sang jazz. I never listened to jazz. I didn't even know anything about jazz until this movie. Spike, before he even got the part, was sending me music to listen to. I grew up singing gospel. I didn't listen to jazz. It was gospel. And if I heard other stuff, it was my uncle would introduce me to, and it was very eclectic. But never was a jazz singer in the list. Never. I found out later, I found out later that my grandmother used to sing jazz. I didn't know that because she sounded just like Billie Holiday. I remember the first time I heard Billie Holiday when I'm 23 years old, and I'm like, oh my gosh, she sounds just like grandma. My grandmother's tone was like that. But she was always singing Christian music. She was always singing gospel. I never heard jazz music. So when I did this movie, the assumption is that I was going to do jazz music. But that wasn't who I was as a singer. That was my character, right? I was a young woman, had my own style. I wrote myself original music. I'd say the closest music to mine at the time was, I don't know if you remember or even know of, Alanis Morissette. White girl, alternative rock. That was me.
Okay.
I was an alternative rocker when it came to my stuff because I am very socially conscious. Come from a church, I'm not singing about romantic love. Right. I'm singing about how to change the world.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That's what I want to sing about. And it had a harder edge to it, and it had guitar, and it had bass, and it had drums, and that was the style of music I did. And so I got a record deal right off the top.
Okay.
And they were pushing me towards jazz because it was an easy fix. It was an easy
because of
the success of that song. They wanted to do what was easy, and I was like, I don't want to sing about love every few songs. I want to sing about what I want to sing, And I was very hard-headed when it came to my music. And then I experienced the darkness of it. On the business side, how dark it was, how influenced by drug culture it was, how all of this, and I was like, I'll just sing. I'll record when I can. I'm not,
Yeah.
So my thing got. Plus, there were other things that happened too that I'm not going to that are private. That, let's just say, some blackballing happened because of some decisions that I made, and that also eliminated a lot of opportunities for me because I just wasn't willing to play the game.
Right.
And so I was fine with that. I was like, I'll just sing in bands. I'll write my own music. I'll record on my own independent stuff. And if I get stuff out there, I do. And I've done a lot of singing in movies, on soundtracks, and done a lot of other recording, done a lot of live. I eventually even got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm older now. When I got a little older, I was like, I'll sing jazz. Okay. So I've been, up till COVID, did a lot of live performance in jazz. And I'm very good at it. My voice fits the genre.
And now, family life, right? Now the baby, you have a child. Now, how did you manage acting, singing. How did you do that? How did that all come into work the workout? Because I know it's rough, right?
I it didn't work out because I first of all thought when I was pregnant I'll never work again. I really thought that. I was like, I'll never work again. And I mean, I already had been dealing with. You asked about struggles or hardships.
Right, right,
I'm big. You know what I mean? I'm not big, but I'm tall.
right.
Not as tall now as I used to be, but I was taller than most of the men
Mm-hmm.
in the business. Everybody used to think Denzel and Wesley were so tall because standing next to me, they looked tall. No, I'm tall. They're normal. You know, they were like 5'10",
Mm-hmm.
something like that. You know, 5'11", I think maybe Denzel was.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody thought they were so tall because I was so tall next to them. Most men in the business are way shorter than me, way smaller than me. I'm thick. I'm well-rounded woman. And so I thought when I got a baby, I'm like, I ain't never losing all this baby fat and I'm never going to work again. But that's not true. I actually worked literally, I think my baby was 2 months old and I'm working again.
Right, right.
I kept working but when we came to the point when my daughter was starting to go to preschool, because I had her father kept her in the early, maybe first year, but then she was always with me. She came to work with me. She was the perfect baby on set. I swear, whenever they would call action, no noise, no noise. When they would call cut, you know, the baby gurgling and stuff.
Right.
It was like she just understood.
Right.
And but when she started preschool and coming home talking about being fat,
Okay.
and all of that, I'm like, oh no, I'm getting my kid out of here. I did not want to raise her in that environment. She was already just a gorgeous person. You know, she's just a pretty girl. Genetics are crazy. She ended up with these blue eyes, and this light blonde hair, and nobody thought she was mine. I had to change my name just so I could get my girl out of school because nobody believed that she was mine. I'm like, she's mine. But she looks more like her daddy. But anyway, I was like, I got to get her out of here. So we moved back to Chicagoland around my family because I wanted her to be raised in a tribe. She's the only child. I started very late. I wasn't going to have any more. Her dad didn't care. He was like, you can go there if you want. So we did. And I thought I'd work more in Chicago. Found it had not changed much when it came to the likes of me. So it opened up other doors. I started writing. So I could be a mom and all of that and write. And I ended up writing so much. I had been writing for years, but never really pushed myself as a writer. But that opened it up. And so for the most part, that is my bread and butter. And since then, but when my daughter started, maybe she's like 16, and I started getting out there a little bit more, working a little bit more as an actress. And now, you know, I won't do it unless it's really good. If the screenplay is phenomenal, then I'll consider it. If the budget is going to be fair, then I'll consider it. Otherwise, I'm just not doing it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how do you choose roles now? Like, how do you go about it? Because you have an extensive catalog now of movies, you know. You know, it's very, very. What is that like? Like, you know, at this point, like, you know, getting back into. Are you getting back into any new roles right now, or you? I know you're going to sing.
Yeah, I'm. Now that the strike is kind of like finally moved beyond. Because COVID and the strike, I worked during COVID, so I had a few things come out during that time. But after COVID, and then with the writer strike and the actor strike and all that, it shut everything down.
Yeah.
And then for about a year and a half after, producers were mad and they didn't want to really do anything, so they didn't do any new content.
Right.
So things are just now starting to come back.
Yeah.
I audition once in a blue moon, but not really, not much. For the most part, it's offers, and it's been offers. I think I've only like scored 3 jobs through auditions. Everything else has been an offer, and and I have 3 movies that I know of for this year that I'm supposed to shoot.
Okay.
The reason why I said yes to them is because they're phenomenal. They're
Yep.
just
Okay.
wonderful scripts.
Hmm.
And, it's been an issue for independent films to get financing because when Hollywood was shut down, investors were afraid to invest.
Right.
But now they're in desperate need for content because they don't have any programming
Right.
because they stopped shooting everything. So that bodes well for independent filmmaking also, because the one thing that I heard the producers or the Hollywood studios are starting to do, so they really have to pay us what we're supposed to get as much as they're paying independent filmmakers. They're like, make your movies, and then so you pay the actors, so they only get this much, and you do this, and you pay for a script, so they only get this much, and then we'll buy it from you, and you'll make $1 million. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, but I don't care about that if it's really good and it's fair.
Right.
If you're trying to give me $50 a day, it's not gonna happen. No, but
Days are over now. It's time to kind of like I know it's time to like especially if you in the movie business now. 'Cause so many. It's so what it is. It's like when you kind of watch. I'm a movie person, right? So I like Tubi. Tubi. I love Tubi, right? My wife always gets on me. Oh, you get everything. I'm like, no, I like Tubi. I love to see the independent artists, right? Come up with some work. Some are not good, right? But they can do better. They can always do better with the shooting. But there are a lot that are good, right? And I met a couple of the producers and the filmmakers, on here, and I support them, right? I just love to see, people, this platform, that you can make a movie, right, on your own budget, right, and then bring it to television. I love it. You know what I mean?
well, it's one of the few ways. I mean, other streaming are taking note and changing up to be like Tubi. The thing about Tubi is it's so good on one hand, meaning independent filmmakers can make their films and get them seen, get support, and the producers can make their money back and make a living, right? And that's because of advertisements. That's because of the commercials, right? A lot of filmmakers, I say that lightly, are not filmmakers, but they're making movies anyway because they believe in themselves and whatever. They don't care that the script's not good. They don't care that the actors aren't great. They don't care because they're making money. Why? Because they got a support system that will watch it. If it's black, I have a roommate, same thing. He watches all the Tubi movies, no matter how good, how bad, because he supports black product.
Right.
I'm looking forward to the day when those filmmakers, now that they've made their millions, will invest in a good writer, invest in a great cinematographer, invest in at least educating the actors that they're working with. If they don't want to use other actors, that's okay. Just have them educated, have them directed, have them coached, so that we're uplifting the product.
Because I'm shocked about that.
We're seeing something different. We're seeing something more. The only thing about Tubi that a lot of people don't know is it's the same people as Fox, right? Owned by the same. So in the old days, if you go back, we're old enough to remember back in the early days with Fox, they built that channel with black programming.
Right.
But what they would do is they would have the black programming, right? But they would stop it as soon as it was contract time to pay those actors more. They would get rid of the show, and then they would bring in a new black show and a new black show. And the really good shows like New York Undercover or A Living Single and all these great shows, they would just throw them away because they didn't care that they were good. They were just carrying the fact that they can pay them the barest minimum and build their channel. And then they built their channel and all those shows went away, right? Tubi's the same thing. It's owned by the same people and they're doing the same thing. They're using Black content creators to build it. The question is, will they do what they did with Fox and throw them away?
Yeah, because some of the movies, you watch them, you watch the support because sometimes people, they'll let me know, oh, they have a new movie on, so I check it out, and then
Mhm.
sometimes I look at my wife used to do film, and she went to NYU. She got to do the certificate program, and and she did some filming, so I learned a lot about what she did.
Mhm.
I even helped them sometimes. I helped on the set. I was in there on the set sometimes too, doing
Mhm.
sound. Like, I don't know much about this stuff, but they needed, they needed, some help. But you know, we I just like I would like to see them like have better quality on some of the movies, right? Because some of them the sounds, you can talk in 1 minute, the next frame it's humming and well, it's interference, then switches back.
It drives me crazy.
It drives me-
Sound
yeah,
is the least paid attention to,
yeah,
especially with new filmmakers, because
yeah,
it's not easy to have good sound. You really have to
yeah.
have a quality, educated sound engineer,
Right,
along with all the other elements to
right,
make the sound work.
right,
It's not easy.
right.
And you can tell, oh my gosh, I did a movie once. I'm not gonna say what it was. It was so frustrating.
Mhm.
It was such a beautiful film, beautiful to look at, great acting, great story, all of that. The sound was horrific. And you could tell that they just used some library sound scoring or something. The scoring was terrible. It was like smack you in the face with a pan. It was so obvious. I'm like, dun, dun, dun. Are you serious? Oh my gosh. Sound is the most ignored
Mhm.
by new filmmakers.
Right,
And without good sound, you cannot pretend that it's a decent budget.
right.
You can tell it's not a decent budget. I have a friend in Detroit where there's a lot of Tubi maybe movies made. I've actually
Mhm.
worked with some of them. I have one. I don't know when it's coming out. I did one last year. I had a film I was in
Mhm.
um, that I'm sure will be on Tubi. Um, but my friend, who's also uh, a producer,
Mhm.
he is a phenomenal sound
Right,
person.
right,
So he never stops working.
right,
He is always working because now in Detroit, it's known that you gotta fix that sound.
right,
And so he's the go-to guy for almost all the productions.
right.
I think he has too much work, you know.
Yeah,
So then okay, then what do? You start looking for fresh young talent and teach them.
right.
Teach them so you have your own crop of artists coming up
Right.
right out of your place. You don't got to bring them from LA. You don't have to bring them from somewhere else. But you educate them. You don't just say, "Here, do this, hold this, boom." That's not enough.
Right.
Sound is far bigger than that. You have to be listening. You have to pay attention to the tone of the room. There's so many aspects to it. And then when you get to the post production part, it just makes sense to have real musicians.
You can't fix some of them. Some of the problems you just can't fix. You gotta do it better, do it from the beginning. Do the best you can, and then it was minimal editing. So, but some of them I look at. I know, like I said, but the people that I know that I follow, I always love their. I love the work they put into it. The sound is right. The frames are right. The acting is pretty good. It's really good. It's really good. That's why I like to, when I run across, stay in touch with them. But it's good. I love them. And plus they got some older movies that we love from,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, literally
yeah,
almost everything I've done is on Tubi.
yeah,
Almost
yeah,
stuff I had never seen before
yeah,
is on Tubi. I'm like, I had a friend of mine who was like, "Oh yeah, I just love this," and I'm like, "Where'd you see that?" They're like, "Tubi." I'm like, "What? Never
There's some
saw it."
jewels on it. There's a lot of jewels on it, and I want to support. I like to support Black independent artists. Just love to support them. I know how hard it is. Let me
Mhm.
ask you one question here. I want to ask you this.
Mhm.
From your perspective, right? How do you feel the film industry sort of changed since you started? I know it was a lot, but in your perspective.
Oh my gosh, it's a different world.
Well,
Oh my gosh. When I started, first of all, there wasn't hardly any programming for us. There wasn't, just wasn't. We had things coming out that were changing things, like A Different World, Cosby Show, all the Martin Show, all these shows that were coming out that were changing things, right? There were characters that weren't all pimps and hoes. They weren't all drug dealers. We did have the hood movies, and I was in my own hood movie, Caught Up. But that was still different because it was showing that aspect of life. That
that's a classic to us too. We love it. We love
yeah,
it.
there was an aspect of life in those movies that was new to people, and so a lot of changes happened. But in those days, all you needed
Right.
was to be talented,
Mhm.
to look good enough,
Mhm.
depending on kind of characters you're trying to play,
Mhm.
to be in the right place at the right time, meet as many people as you could, and network,
Mhm.
and be good on the set. Show up on time, be kind to everyone, blah blah blah.
It seemed
Right.
like during that time they were like hard workers, like hard and very skilled. Like even though
Well, back in the day, before maybe 10 years into my career, you had to be educated. That was a part of it. The actors were educated. They went to the Yales or the
yeah,
Boston
yeah,
like I did or
yeah.
whatever. But then they started, because the numbers and accountants started running things.
Mhm.
They cared more about how much of a following you had, and so not dissing rappers at all, but rappers became the thing. Everybody's a rapper. That's performer. I mean, that's in movies
Mhm.
because of the numbers they had.
Right.
And they did not. The accountants didn't want to work to create a star. Which was is very easy for them to do. They want to just put this rapper or that rapper, and some of those rappers could act because we can do multiple things sometimes.
Right.
But a lot of those actors could not, right? So it changed. So it went from educated, and not necessarily educated in a 4-year
Right.
school,
Right.
but someone who studied to do this stuff, to people that had never done it in their lives, and they're just playing themselves, right? Because they have this huge audience as a singer or a rapper or whatever. So it shifted then. And then it shifted again. They go through their flavors, light skinned girls, dark skinned girls, dark blah blah blah. Now it's anybody that's not a Black American is going to play a Black American in movies. They can be from the continent, they can be from England, they can be from the Caribbean, anywhere but here.
Mhm.
They're playing the Black American roles, right?
Mhm.
So it's just like, okay, how do you get past that?
Yeah.
So now
Mhm.
with the independent, when I first started out to do an independent, it was like, you're not going to do an independent unless you want to stop working in the studios because they don't like sharing the talent with the independent world. That was part of the reason why I was at Earth. I did One False Move. They were like, you can't do anything like that anymore if you're going to work with us. I was
Mhm.
like, I'm going to do what I want to do. That movie was good. You know what I'm saying? So, but now independent movies are the only way that you can possibly really make back your money, unless it's one of the top tier superhero movies.
Mhm.
Many of those films are not making money.
Yeah,
They're losing.
yeah, like with the Academy, right? It was the Academy Awards where there was a lot of them that won awards this year. It's a lot of them for independent filmmakers.
Yeah, because it's the change now. Because you're seeing more independent films than you are studio films because of the economy, because of people changing to streaming.
Mhm.
It's very different now, and it's also different in that Now you're competing not only with people from other places, whatever. Now you're competing with social media stars.
Yeah.
You know, and social media stars are, some of them are brilliant and they're probably phenomenal, but many of them are lucky. And they just said the right thing at the right time and they got the right numbers and they are working.
Right. Right.
But it's a way for a young actor like my daughter who decided to do what I do, which shocked me.
Well, she decided to act and sing both.
No, just act. She's an actor and model,
Okay.
and a visual artist.
Okay.
And it's like now you have to do social media.
Yeah.
They used to look at your picture first, your resume second, your reel third. Now they look at your following and how many numbers you have, how many people are following you first, then your picture, then maybe your reel, if they even get there. Because if your numbers are not right, if you don't have enough, if you can't sell enough tickets to your following, say you have 5,000, right? You got 5,000 followers. Okay, that's 5,000 tickets. But if you down to 100, you got 100 followers, forget it. You're not working.
Right.
They don't care how talented you are. They don't care how beautiful you are, because they have this social media star that's got millions of followers who may not be able to act, but they're pretty and they can do it.
Yeah, that's.
You know what I'm saying? So that's happening. That's different. But you can also become a star with your phone.
Right.
You know, it's a dime a dozen. I mean, not a dime a dozen. It's 1 out of a million. But you can do it if you're proactive about it. You know, that's different. Now, actors, we used to have to go to casting offices to audition. Now we got to audition ourselves. We got to set up a whole setup. We got to put on lights and find somebody to read with us and all to audition. They don't even do that anymore. So you have to be your own publicity person. You have to be your own director. You have to do your own auditions to send out. It's just a very, very different world. But I've never been afraid of change, which is kind of strange considering. But I've never really been afraid of change. So I adapted very quickly. When my peers were afraid of doing it and didn't want to do it and were too good to do it, and I'm not doing it, I'm an artist, I'm like, I'm getting on social media because I see that's the direction of things.
Right.
And I've maintained my relevance because of it. Yeah. I might have disappeared when I left California in 2007 had I not really invested myself into social media. And I didn't want to. I can't stand seeing pictures of myself. I can't stand it. But I found that if I didn't put my face out there, no one gave a crap about my words.
Yeah.
Most of the time now on my posts, because I do all these posts, half the people don't listen to what I say. They just want to look at me. They don't give a crap about what I'm saying. I had this experience last year. I was getting tired of all these guys sending me messages. I need to see more than your face. I want to see more than your face. I want to see your body. I kept getting this inbox from different people on different platforms. So one day I was triggered by it. So I was outside, I usually, especially when the weather permits, I walk and talk, right? And so I did this thing where I showed myself. I say, here, you guys, you happy now? You got to see the body. And then I started talking about how we are more than what we look like. Right. We're more than blah, blah, blah. Put this thing out. Do you know at least half of the people were like, finally saw your body, girl, you banging. They didn't hear nothing I said. They heard nothing. Oh, God. And then I knew, I was like, these people aren't listening to what I'm saying. They could care less about what I'm saying.
Social media is a crapshoot. You gotta These some people are like, I don't know. You gotta like, oh God.
Yeah, yeah, but you know what? What I've always said, and I say this to anybody starting this social media world thing, I say, look, the people that are meant to hear the message that you give will.
Right, right,
The people that aren't won't.
right,
That's why I never look at numbers. I don't go checking analytics, and I'm not gonna do that to myself.
right,
Oh, they didn't like that. Why did they like that one? Nah. Mm-mm. I just say what I gotta say, and I leave it.
right,
And if one person is affected in a positive way, amen. I'm glad because that's why I do it. I don't do it because I want to be seen.
right.
I do it. At first, I did it because I needed to build numbers for work as an actor, right? But then I started recognizing the fact that because all my meditations and things that I say, I'm saying for me. I'm saying for me. And I was like, well, maybe what I'm saying for me will help somebody else, you know?
It's
Because
awesome.
I don't have any knowledge about anybody else's life, what people are going through, but I know what I'm going through. And what I found, especially when I wrote my book,
Mm-hmm.
Pink Panty Confessions, not underwear, that's a drink.
Mm-hmm.
When I wrote that book, I heard from so many people saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe you went through that. Oh my gosh, I can't believe you're
Right.
just like me. I had similar situation. And I've had people call me and be like, people unexpectedly, I was gonna hurt myself, but I saw this that you said, or I was, I one time I had a reporter, I did a whole thing with her, and the next day she called me and she told me, she said, I'm sorry to call you back, but I just want you to know you saved a life yesterday. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? She's like, I was planning, after I did your interview, I was going to kill myself. I
Really?
lost my mother the day before. I didn't see any reason why I live. And she said, and you just started talking about your mom. And you started talking about that, and it changed everything for me. And then I understood that I needed to live to honor her. And those kind of things happen a lot, you know. So if it's that one person that you speak to, if you do this stuff,
Yeah.
it's enough.
Yeah.
As long as it's coming from a place of love, it's enough.
Yeah. So and what did you just came out with this book, right? So have you begun a lot of good responses other than this one? Have you pretty much have like a I mean, since you've been doing, I know you have this. What you have the ascension, right? So, are you gonna have like maybe, a discussion on this book with people? Or?
Well, I did free. I mean, that book came out in 2014.
Yeah, yeah, okay,
So I did what we call pink panty parties.
yeah, yeah.
So I would go around with different groups, and I thought when I wrote that book, I wrote it geared towards women,
Mm-hmm,
but I have a lot of male fans.
mm-hmm,
A lot of them got the book thinking it's about something it's not,
mm-hmm.
and ended up reading it and or buying it for their daughters and their wives and stuff
Right,
like that, right?
right,
And so my pink panty parties that I thought were going to just be for women, which all that is, a quick explanation is my friend, one of my best friends in LA, Nacy Payne, and I would get together and we would have pink panty parties. And all that is we would have our vodka lemonade slushies
mm-hmm,
and we would vent.
right,
So it's just letting things off of your chest with a little drink. And I even had a non-alcohol thing that I would do too. And so I would have these little parties. We would have appetizers,
mm-hmm,
would talk about the book. I would answer questions, do a reading, and hopefully, I made up games to
right,
try to get other people to vent, to talk. Because the original idea for this book was not my stories. I wanted to write it for other people. It was kind of like my version of Chicken Soup for the Soul.
right,
And I did at the end of this book, there are, I think, 8 contributors beside me that actually wrote for me and put a story in that book. including my mom, which was huge because I found out things talking to her because I did hers. I wrote hers up from interviewing her that I never knew about her. So it never got to what I wanted it to get to, but it became a brand. I wrote a screenplay, I wrote a series, I wrote a bunch of stuff that hopefully, I guess when it's divine timing, it'll happen. But it was really a healing journey for me. I started off writing blogs, and a really good friend of mine who hosted. He was a host and had this wonderful company, and he reached out to me because I was blogging. He reached out to me, and his name is Glenn Murray, and he was like, "You really, really need to make this into a book. You need." And I was like, "Huh? Really? What?" And I have been having. I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but when it's time for me to do something, I hear what I'm supposed to do. It's not like a person's voice, but it's like an impression. And for months, I had been hearing right, 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 right. And it's getting on my nerves. And so that's why I started blogging. And then when he reached out to me, I was like, okay, all right, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. And so I took some of the blogs that I'd written and I expanded them, and then I wrote more. And so it's kind of like a mishmash of essays, poetry, and insights from my life. Memoir. It's self help for sure, and I pushed it for a few years, and every once in a while people buy it, and it's still out there. It's on Amazon or wherever books are sold. And So it's still meaningful, although I'm not that girl anymore. I've lived a lifetime since then. I started writing a second one, but my life got so busy,
Okay.
and especially with screenplay writing, that I just don't have the time to sit down to finish it, which bums me out. But maybe one day, if I get one of my movies made, everybody will buy it, and that'll give me the time to write more.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I just have two more questions,
Mhm.
and one of them is going back to acting and maybe and singing too. So let's say you can use this question for both. Okay.
Mhm.
What advice would you give aspiring actors and singers, musicians, looking to break into the industry today? What advice would you give them? Would you for the young people coming in to the business?
I would say that it's a really good idea to get a mentor,
Mm-hmm.
someone that does this stuff and has kind of cracked the code, if you can. And that's one thing, mentor,
Right.
because there's so many ins and outs.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of hard to learn on your feet. I mean, it's kind of hard to learn without some guidance. Educate yourself. You know what I'm saying? However you do it. Some people aren't made for a 4-year college. Some people can't get into an acting school, can't afford it. But there are workshops, there are classes, there are books. There are so many ways to actually practice. And just like doctors and nurses have to get certified, we have to constantly stay learning, so that persistence is key. Knowing yourself,
Right.
knowing if you love something, you just don't fully give up to it. You're given to the negative sides of it. You keep pushing,
Right.
and you don't take it personal when you don't work or you don't get it, because you understand that it's not me, because I did the best work that I can. I was good in that. I feel good inside. I know I did it, but they, for whatever reason, chose to go a different way. You can't take it personal because it's one out of how many for a certain role or whatever. So you really have to believe in yourself and keep pushing it, and don't give up. Because as soon as you give up, you probably were like stepping through the door,
Right.
and you can't do that if you love this stuff. Now, if you don't love this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I would do it. You
Mm,
got you gotta love it
you gotta love it.
because there's too much rejection. It's too difficult. Um, it's a hard journey. It's a hard path. It's a hard journey
Right,
uh, because you never know if you're going to be have any stability.
right.
Even people that become huge stars, I remember it was hilarious. I did this. Remember back in the day, Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous?
Yeah.
I was on that show.
You are?
Yeah, isn't that hilarious?
Oh.
And I remember asking them, I'm like, how did I get on the show? Because I am not rich. And they were like, no, no, it's Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. I was like, oh, fame. Oh, okay, okay. But I'll never forget them telling me we were doing an interview and stuff, and them telling me that they had just been with Jack Lemmon,
Hmm.
the actor.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
was talking about how he was always afraid he would never work again.
Oh.
So that's just the thing, That's just the thing. That's why sometimes people make pretty horrible choices in work because they just want to work.
Hmm.
I've done it. I just wanted to work. Yeah, I'll do it, even though it's terrible. Sure. I don't do that anymore because I learned that um, desperation does not help.
Right, right.
you know,
Wow.
that was a few things.
That's okay. I loved it.
Mhm.
And I know you said you have a couple of films coming up now.
Well, I'm supposed to be shooting a couple of films, but I cannot tell you how many movies I'm attached to. I'm attached to so many that have not shot yet. So when I say that, that doesn't mean anything, until someone calls me with a contract
Okay.
and gives me a start date, But right now, there are 3 movies that I know of that I'm supposed to shoot this year. So y'all just keeping the ear open and check me out on here or wherever. And I'll always announce it when I got something coming out.
All right. Thank you for this wonderful interview. I had a good time.
I appreciate you for having me. Thank you for everyone that joined us. And come say hi to me on my page too.
Now, what's your page? What's your
It's Cinda Williams 615.
okay.
CYNDAWILLIAMS 615.
All right. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely gonna stay in touch and follow you and support you. And if you need help with promotions or anything like that, let me know. This is what I do all the time. So I I love it. I definitely be in touch.
All right, sir. Thank you so
Thank
much for
you very
having me.
much.
God bless
Good
everyone.
work.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work. Everyone, Cinda Williams. Bye bye.
Bye.
All right.